Gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's August the 8th, 2023. I'm Gary Furman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined by our managing editor, Matt Shodell, as we discuss the news of the day, presented this morning by GameTime.co, your last-minute ticket headquarters at the best prices guaranteed. And we'll tell you a little bit more about GameTime.co later in the show. But Matt, first, let's talk about the coaches poll, which came out yesterday, seemed to create a lot of fuss, not just in Miami Hurricane circles, where the Canes were basically ranked number 41 to start the season. That'll rattle any Canes fan out there. But also 5 opponents are ranked higher than Miami in the preseason poll, which suggests a 7-5 season. And while 7-5 would be an improvement over 5-7, I don't know too many Canes brothers and sisters out there that would be content with finishing 7-5 this year. I think the bar is appropriately set at 8. I think people are hoping for 9. If they can get to 10, Mario Cristobal becomes a National Coach of the Year candidate, fueled by these underwhelming lack of expectations going into the season. People just don't have Miami on the radar. Now, Matt, when you look at this Canes team, okay, and you take a look at the top end talent, and I'll admit there's not a ton of elite, but if you look at potentially Leonard Taylor, Cam Kinchins, James Williams, Javion Cohen, Matt Lee, Akeem Messidor, Tyler Van Dyke. Those are 8 guys that potentially could play themselves into decent NFL draft stats this year. So the cupboard is not as barren as it's been in recent seasons. There is some hope due to what Miami has brought in from the transfer portal that the Canes will be relevant again in April when the NFL drafts its players. So let's break this down a little bit. Let's talk about it, get your thoughts. When you saw the coaches poll yesterday, I was surprised. I didn't expect Miami to be 41. I thought maybe somewhere around 25. That was my expectation. Your thoughts when you saw how disrespected Miami is right now, or just ignored by the coaches out there?
Well, they're tied for 40th, but the first of all, I'm not sure that every one of these head coaches is sitting down and actually doing these polls themselves. This is a bunch of low-level guys in the building who don't need those 2 hours of time to help the team win a game this year. That are being told, can you send in this list and just give it to me afterwards? And yeah, I'm sure the head coach checks it afterwards and just says, "Oh yeah, this looks pretty good. I'll send it in." So like I pretty much take it with somewhat of a grain of salt. What it tells you is it just sort of gives you an overall snapshot of sort of the national view, which is nice because if you're in this little Miami cupboard, then and you don't open the doors to the cupboard, then you just think that this team, like Gary said, you got some NFL talent. The coaches are talking everything up. Except for Matt Shodell being this negative person that everybody hates, it seems like everything's great in the cupboard.
You're fraying some nerves. There's no doubt about it. I was looking at the YouTube comments yesterday.
Yeah, push Shodell out of the cupboard, and you're going to get to 12 wins, no problem. The problem is Shodell being in the cupboard with everybody, because if Shodell wasn't in the cupboard, we could all just agree that this team's going to win 10 to 12 games this year, and everything's going to be fine. But Shodell's in the cupboard, and Shodell's here to tell you that everybody outside the cupboard doesn't think Miami's so good. You see the ACC preseason picks by the ACC media. There was barely a mention of Miami players in that whole list of preseason all ACC guys. I think there was three guys maybe. And one was a kicker, right? I mean, so for all this NFL talent, we got 3 guys, including a kicker, that apparently out of everyone in the ACC will be all ACC, first team type guys.
People are conditioned to disrespect the Canes. It's just it's been earned. I mean,
right? Miami's done nothing to say they should be in the top 25. They won, and look, Texas A&M didn't have a good year either, but they should. They barely are 25th. But Miami's done nothing to say to anybody at this point that they should be in the top 25. They have 2 new coordinators. They got rid of almost the whole staff. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a depth questions almost at every position because you can point to positions that do have really good starters. I like the starter at quarterback. I like 3 of the starters on the offensive line. Just because a true freshman's hard to tell. I like the entire defensive line except for one starting defensive tackle position on the defensive tackle depth. I like Francisco Mauigoa. I think that Wesley Bissainthe is going to be really good. KJ Cloyd could also help to some extent. And the safeties are the best in the nation. The safeties are great, or among the best in the nation at least. So to me, though, nobody ever factors in that there are injuries in football every week. I mean, every team, no team goes unscathed. The problem Miami's going to have is who gets hurt, how early in the season they get hurt, and what positions are getting hurt. Because let's face it, there's going to be guys that get hurt. It's just the nature of the game. There's never been a team in Miami history where every starter lasts the whole season, perfectly healthy. Doesn't happen. So the problem for me is there's a major gap in depth between Miami and a lot of ACC teams. And that's, sort of some of it's been inherited by Mario, some of it's been created by Mario with just being desperate in the transfer portal and having some guys that probably, just are on the roster just to be on the roster at this point, quite honestly. So that's the concern I have because, if everybody stays 100% healthy all season that are starters, I do think this team will win 9 or 10 games. But just realistically, that doesn't happen. And I happen to know the depth just isn't there. The depth just isn't there. And that's what concerns me. If Tyler Van Dyke gets hurt in game 2, let's say, right? Texas A&M has a brutal defensive line. Let's just say, hypothetically, he gets hurt in game 2. How many games are people predicting Miami's going to win then? I think at that point, you think 7's a good number, right? I think most YouTube people who disagree with me would probably at least agree with that based on what we saw last year. So, there's just a lot of unknowns. And it's nice in the preseason to guess and to say you think this or you think that. And, people disagreed with me yesterday, every day. But yesterday in particular, they thought I was putting words in Shannon Dawson's mouth by saying that he said he's going to play 8 to 10 wide receivers. They're like, no. He said 8 to 10, including running backs and tight ends. I'm like, oh my gosh, did Matt Trudell make a mistake? Because Matt Trudell never makes mistakes. So I went back and I actually reread the actual quote that he said. And he said that he has teams that have 12 players that catch balls in games. When you include the running backs and tight ends, the 8 to 10 number was the receivers, people. That's the receivers, okay? 8 to 10 receivers, that's not garbage minutes for the whole season. He has 8 or 10 receivers that catch a ball in the whole season. That's in every game playing meaningful reps. That was the question he was asked. How many receivers do you expect to be in the rotation in games? 8 to 10 was his answer. Okay? That was the answer. I'm not trying to put words in his mouth. That's what he said. And everyone's like, oh, I'm twisting everybody's words. No, Lance Guidry, just because you say calmly, I murdered 10 people yesterday and then I went out to dinner, it was great. Just because you say it like that doesn't make it okay. Lance Guidry said it very calmly. And by the way, I didn't murder anybody. Okay, that was an example, people. Don't call the police. But Lance Guidry said it very calmly, he has no concerns about it. And that's why people aren't flustered about it. And that's why they're annoyed at me for flustering them about it. But what he clearly said very, very calmly was that he's put in not all of his defense. The amount he's put in, players understand 75% of it. He's going to try to put in the rest of it and throw it at the wall and see what sticks is what he said. And they'll go from there. That's what he said 3 weeks before the season. He said it very calmly, very nicely, he's not concerned. And so everyone's on me about it. I'm not the one who said it, people. He's the one who said it. Why am I getting in trouble for just repeating what he said and bringing it at he talked for 15 minutes or whatever, 12 minutes. So maybe people glossed over that part. But as a reporter, Gary's job and my job is to annoy you and to tell you the parts of what people say that's really interesting.
To annoy people.
You annoy people too. and delve into what they're saying and what they really mean, and delve into what they're saying sometimes, because sometimes the coaches say a lot of things in a train of thought, and they probably don't even realize sometimes, perhaps, that what they've said is new information because they already have known it, right? It's like when you're telling a story and you leave out a part of the story because you know that part of the story. The person you're telling to, they're like, wait, I don't understand your story. And you realize after you tell the story, oh, wait, I left out the most important part. Maybe this is only me that tells stories like this. That's why you didn't understand it. I forgot to tell you that part. And like sometimes coaches are like that. They'll tell you a story. Tell me about your defensive line. They'll tell you. Tell me about how many players you play at receiver. They tell you. Like they already know what they're doing. They don't think it's news because everybody in the building knows what they're doing. That's their plan. They just are telling you what everybody already knows as far as they're concerned. They're not looking at Twitter. They're not looking at the newspapers like, wait, did a player at Media Day say how many players I'm playing? Did a player at Media Day say how aggressive my defense is going to be over and over and over again? Which, yes, people, I'll stop talking about how aggressive this defense is in every story, okay? You don't have to worry about it anymore. You get it. But they say these things knowing that they know it and knowing that everyone in the building knows it. But sometimes they don't realize that, wait a minute, reporters have never heard this. Fans have never heard this. It's new information, but it's part of a longer string in a long paragraph or multiple paragraphs. And as reporters, we are trained to pick out that sentence that was like, wait a minute, even though he said it in the middle of this long train of thought and, said it like everybody knows it, like, no, we didn't know this. And that's really what I did yesterday. I said, these are two things, one from Lance and one from Shannon, that we didn't know, that they said very calmly in the middle of a long train of thought interview with reporters that I found interesting. And people are like lambasting me for it when all I'm doing is literally saying what they said and what it means for this program. And they're like, no, that's not what they said. And I literally had to respond to the YouTube comments with just the actual quote. Like they're saying, no, they meant tight ends and running backs. I'm like, read the quote. I didn't make it up. It's what he said.
Yeah, stuff can get twisted around sometimes in translation. But all right, look, if you're a Miami Hurricane player, if you're a Miami Hurricane coach, and you're not happy with the way the world is looking at this football program right now, and it's undeniable. I mean, it's top to bottom. Tyler Van Dyke suddenly went from a guy that a year ago was being talked about as a first-round draft pick. Now he's not even mentioned. I mean, they're saying maybe he can get drafted in the third round. He got hurt, people. He had a bad year last year. He had a new offensive coordinator. It took time. They didn't click at the beginning, and then he got hurt. Okay, he was the same Tyler Van Dyke that you were saying was going to be a first-round draft pick a year ago. Okay, but whatever. You want to disrespect him, he will get his opportunity to change the narrative, to flip the script. And so will the Miami Hurricanes. Look, you want to be respected? Go out there and beat Texas A&M the second week of the season. You got them at home. It's a national TV game. The stadium's going to be stoked. It's right there for you, right in front of you. Like, go win that football game. Prove that you could beat somebody that can walk and chew gum. Hello, Jay Collette. Who can, tie their shoelaces. Okay, like prove it on the football field, and people will take notice. They start to respect you. You win that game, you got a shot to be 5-0 going to North Carolina. That would wake up some people. Okay, so I personally, Matt, I don't want to hear anybody complaining about any rankings or lack of respect or anything like that. Keep heads down, keep working, keep grinding, Mario Cristobal style. Go out there on September 9th, I think it is, and beat Texas A&M, period. Then worry about the rest of the season. Now, the top 25s are pretty cookie cutter. Georgia, everyone's picking Georgia to win yet again. I mean, I don't know, man. To me, like that's the lazy pick. They've won back-to-back national titles. Okay. How many teams have we seen, including the great Miami teams, including the great Alabama teams, win 3 straight national titles? Okay. So I'm automatically, personally, picking against Georgia just because of the law of averages, but everybody wants to make them number one. The team that's scaring everybody a little bit is Michigan. Okay. They have an extremely, extremely talented team. They will probably win the Big Ten for the 3rd straight year. More than likely, they're that good. They got a kid named J.J. McCarthy at quarterback, who's really, really good, and they figure to make the playoff. Let's be honest. Alabama is Alabama. I'm not sure this year. They don't really have a quarterback. When you don't have a quarterback, you're going to lose a couple games that people don't think you're going to lose. Ohio State is still Ohio State, but they're breaking in a new quarterback as well. We'll see what happens there. So, you could go on and on through this thing: LSU, USC, Penn State. They got Florida State number 8, Clemson number 9. The Canes will get a shot at both of those teams, obviously. Tennessee, where they've done a great job of recruiting, is listed at number 10. Washington, Texas, Notre Dame, Utah, Oregon, TCU, Kansas State, Oregon State, Oklahoma, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Ole Miss. And here's where it starts to get a little bit like, wow. Tulane, number 23. You're telling me Tulane has a better football program right now than Miami? I don't know, man. I'd hope that the Hurricanes prove that is just not the case. Texas Tech, Texas A&M. And then when you get into the others receiving votes, and you run into teams before the Canes like Texas, San Antonio. Come on, man. Troy. Listen, I hope that this poll is proven by the Miami Hurricanes to be bogus, and that we're sitting here laughing at it a couple months from now, Matt, because what they put out there for our consumption here in the last 12 to 15 hours or so is a bit distressing.
Well, remember, with this particular poll, it's a list of college coaches who vote, right? So there are certain conferences that want their teams represented. So there's going to be a concerted effort by those programs in those conferences to at least pick 1 or 2 of their teams and say, hey, make sure you put these teams in the top 25 so we have enough points. So we actually have a program showing up in the top 25 or top 40 or whatever. That's nonsense. That's why they're in others receiving votes. That's nonsense. But you did touch on something earlier before you started talking about other programs, which I don't care about other programs, okay? I care about Miami. And that Texas A&M game is so huge for both programs because Texas A&M, as rough as Miami's had it, Texas A&M's had 1 10-win season since 1999, okay? So they've already beat Miami at that, okay? Because Miami's only had 1 since 2000 and what was it, in the last 19 years. So that's way longer than that. And in terms of the ramifications of this game, okay, Jimbo Fisher off a 5-7 season is desperate to get back to at least 8 or 9 wins. In the SEC, it's not easy, but he's desperate to get back to that. The wheels, I feel, will fall off somewhat for the team that loses that game because in Texas A&M's case, again, with Jimbo Fisher just basically having a program that appears to be fading, even after getting these top recruits, that would be a real problem for him and for that team. If that team has another down year, he's done. Okay. And losing to a Miami team that was 5-7 the year before, that's being tied for 40th, that would not be a good start for them. So from the Miami side, why this game is important, like you said, Gary, Miami has a chance to be 5-0 very easily if they just beat Texas A&M, which would be so good for a team that's really young, that needs to find its footing with a new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. Last year, I felt like Texas A&M was overrated. We talked about that at the time. They were. This year, I feel like Texas A&M, though, is underrated, believe it or not, even at number 25. People you talk to, they think this is a really, really good Aggies team, better than last year's team. So it's going to be really interesting to see, because Texas A&M was really struggling on offense last year, and they seem to think that this year's offense has sort of figured out some of those chinks in the armor.
Well, they got Bobby Petrino running the show.
Yeah, Bobby Petrino, he's a good coordinator. So it's going to be really interesting because in Miami's case, what we saw last year was this was not a program that had players that were ready to be yelled at and pushed to the brink. Because when they started losing games, all Mario knows to do when you lose is to work harder. When you lose a game in Mario's mind, it's not, oh, these poor guys, let's give them a day off. They must feel so bad for themselves. Let them just recuperate in private with their, with their family and their friends and feel better about themselves. That's not how Mario operates. When you lose, Mario's not trying to punish them. Mario thinks they lost because they didn't work hard enough. That's just how he is. Like, that's how it's always been for him. Whenever his teams lost, it's because they weren't working hard enough. Whenever when he was playing, when he was coaching, same thing. So if Miami loses that game, he is going to push that team to be ready, and it's going to take a month before they play another real game. So for a month, that team will be grinding like you've never seen them grind before. And last year, they weren't ready to do it. Last year, you saw what happened when he pushed, when they lost that first game and they really were struggling. He just pushed them and pushed them and pushed them. And you're not working hard enough. Work harder, work harder, work harder. And they couldn't do it. They couldn't take it. They melted down. They were a disaster. Let's face it. They were a disaster. They couldn't do it. And this is when Mario talks about culture.
We weren't that hard and we weren't good enough.
Yeah, when Mario says culture and blueprint, both those words just mean work, okay? Do anything the way you do everything. It just means work. Like that's all, every code word he has, every description he has for what he wants, it just means work. Don't sleep, work. Don't rest, work. You know, if he could say don't do your homework and work, he probably would, you know? I mean, like he wants them working on football, thinking about football 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because that's what he did as a player. That's what he does as a coach. He doesn't understand people that don't do that. And he's trying to get people who want to do that. You hear coaches every time they've been here, they say they want to play a football player who loves football. Again, what that means, code word, work. They want guys who work, who enjoy the work, who enjoy the process, who enjoy being in the film room nonstop, who don't need to be with their friends playing hearts at all hours of the night like I did when I was in college. They want guys who are just gonna get the job done and be mentally strong and just constantly be on the jugs machine, constantly working, constantly encouraging their teammates, constantly on their teammates to get better. Teammate doesn't do it right, you get in their face and you make sure they do it right the next time. That's what he wants. I don't know if this program is there yet with the culture / work ethic that he wants, but we're going to find out if they lose to Texas A&M. But I sort of shudder to think if they do lose that game, what might happen, because the season could go down the tank. I mean, it really could. It could go one of two ways. Either the team's going to respond to what Mario's going to demand of them if they lose that game, or they're going to, again, fade. And if they fade, it's going to be a disaster because you can't do that 2 years in a row. You just can't. So I really want them to win that Texas A&M game so we're not to find out when this team's ready to respond to adversity or not. I just hope they find a way to win that game. They have to win that game. There's no more – you could say FSU, Clemson. I understand the ACC games are more important, but that's the most important game on the schedule. And it's not because of the second game of the year. It's not, because it's an SEC team. It's because of the way Mario will respond if they lose, quite honestly. Like, I know it sounds weird to say that, but, like, I know Mario. I just know how this goes. They need to win that game because of how Mario will respond if they lose. Like, that's it. That's why that's the most important game of the year. No other reason. Like, I'm sorry. That's just how I feel.
All right. So we mentioned that there's 5 opponents that are ranked higher than Miami. You got Florida State, which was ranked number 8. You've got Clemson.
You don't want to get involved. You're worried about the fans, Gary. The fans, let the fans blast Matt for his nonsense. I'm not going to agree or disagree. I don't want to get involved. Good move. Continue, good sir.
Why are you interrupting me? Okay.
Because you just brushed right over my inflammatory comments.
Florida State is number 8. Clemson's number 9. Okay. Miami faces Clemson on October 21st, and then Florida State November 11th. So you get a shot at both those guys to pull an upset and prove it wrong. To me, the swing game of the season is with the next highest ranked team. That's North Carolina. They're ranked number 20, and the Canes get them just before returning home to face Clemson on November the 9th. So the first weekend of November, Miami goes to North Carolina. To me, that is probably going to be the swing game of the season. Are we going to be sitting here in December saying it was a successful year, not a successful year? I think that North Carolina game and to a lesser extent the NC State game on the road are going to be massive barometers of that. If you just go ahead and assume that Miami's probably not beating Florida State and Clemson, okay? Then there's Texas A&M, which is we've already talked about that game. They're number 25. So that is a very big deal. And then NC State would be the equivalent of being about 36th if you factor in the votes. So those 5 teams are ranked ahead of Miami right now, and we will see obviously how it played out. One of the interesting things I saw, Matt, was I liked somebody was playing the overrated, underrated game when they looked at the top 25, and they were calling Alabama overrated at number 3, Clemson underrated at number 9, and I thought that was kind of interesting. I haven't really seen too many people shouting out about Clemson right now. I don't know that they're the same Clemson that they were, 4 years ago or whatever. But I thought it was interesting to see them called underrated. And then overrated, number 19, Oklahoma, which I thought was interesting. That Oklahoma, even at number 19, would be called overrated. And then obviously a lot of people are looking at Miami and saying that, Miami is a little bit off the radar, that they have been snubbed in this poll. I saw them on a list with Iowa, on a list with Kentucky, South Carolina, and Arkansas as teams that are getting snubbed by the pollsters before the season starts. So the bottom line of all this is it's mostly a lot of fun, Matt. I don't know that it's worth getting all wound up about or taking overly seriously, but it's a fun barometer, I would say, in early August.
Yeah, I was about to look up the 2022 preseason poll because these are never right, So here's the I just found it off the top of my head. Here's the Alabama preseason, the AP preseason poll last year. Actually, it wasn't terrible. Alabama first, Ohio State second, Georgia third, Clemson fourth, Notre Dame, Texas A&M was sixth. Okay, Utah, Michigan, which I've had a really good season. Oklahoma was 9th, Baylor was 10th, Oregon 11th, Oklahoma State, NC State was 13th, USC 14th, Michigan State 15th, and guess who was 16th, Gary?
The Canes.
The Canes, followed by Pittsburgh, Wisconsin, bad year, Arkansas, Kentucky, Ole Miss, Wake Forest, Cincinnati, Houston at 24 with their outstanding offensive coordinator. No doubt that's why they got into the top 25 last year. And then BYU. So, and guess who was other receiving votes? Tennessee. Others receiving votes in the AP preseason poll last year, okay? So, I mean, this is all just guesswork. It's all just presumption. None of it means anything. But what it does show you is what's outside the cupboard that all the Miami fans live in, right? It just shows you what everyone sort of thinks before the year, which is, it's fun to see. And, you and I both know there's some holes in the roster at certain positions, depth-wise, for sure. You could argue the starting lineup is probably, if all the stars stay healthy, they're probably I would say the third or fourth best team in the ACC, quite honestly. Right there with North Carolina to me, behind Clemson and Florida State. Just pure starters personnel-wise. If you just have your starters healthy all year in a Madden game, which obviously doesn't exist, against every other ACC, having all their starters healthy all year, I would put Miami third or fourth in the ACC, quite honestly, and I think they beat Texas A&M. So you're getting to you're getting to 9 or 10 wins on the year, depending how that North Carolina game that you call the swing game shakes out, which I would not call that a swing game. I feel like every game for Miami is a swing game nowadays. Like there's no such thing as a swing game off a 5-7 year. Like there's no swing game where now we got 10 wins. Like it's one game. That the North Carolina game. Like I don't understand what that means. The North Carolina game is before Clemson and before Florida State. So whether you win that or lose that, you still got to play those two games. Like beating North Carolina, does that mean you're beating Clemson and Florida State now? Because then are those swing games after
you're
that?
Probably not going to beat Clemson and Florida State, and that's why North Carolina is a measuring stick game, in my opinion. You don't agree? It's fine.
No, it's not that I don't agree.
Life goes on, Matt. Whether you agree or disagree, life goes on.
It's not that I don't agree. It's just that you're flat out wrong. That's all. It's nothing else to it. Really.
You're wrong when you're saying that a game is going to be a measuring stick. There's no right or wrong there. You're going to win or you're going to lose.
Every game is a measuring stick. Okay, like I don't understand your language. I
don't look at Miami of Ohio as a measuring stick. I don't look at Georgia Tech as a measuring stick. I'm sorry, I don't. Now I understand there's a lot of tough games on the schedule. Even like a Louisville is going to be a difficult game. I mean,
it just depends where you line up the measuring stick. Miami, Ohio is a measuring stick. It just shows you where you are compared to that team. A measuring stick, literally by definition, means you're measuring yourself against whatever level that other team is at. So every game, by definition, is a measuring stick game. Like, you apparently don't know the definition of measuring stick. You probably never measured anything. You probably hire handymen. I was up on my ceiling all day yesterday, changing the batteries in my smoke detectors because one of them started beeping at 8 a.m., waking up my kids. And then when I held it to reset it, it started yelling, fire, fire, fire. And then only one of my kids came running out. The other one apparently would have been burned to death. It was a real fire. So that was concerning also. But, some of us understand what a measuring stick is. Some of us, wait, where are you? You're over there. Some of us don't. I'm not going to, not pointing fingers. Not pointing fingers. Anybody doesn't know what a measuring stick is.
Measuring stick, then you're in big trouble.
You have to use a tape measure. It's a tape measure game for you. You don't use a measuring stick.
All right, guys, let me take a minute.
It's a yardometer. It's a yardometer game from the 1920s lingo that Gary knows. He doesn't use measuring sticks or tape measures. That's for the young ones, the young uns. Those are the people who use the measuring sticks and the tape measures. I use my yardometer.
Are you done? All right, listen. You can't interrupt me here for a few minutes here because I got to talk about a new sponsor of the show. Yes, we have a new one. GameTime.co, not .com. It's GameTime.co. And guys, you remember the last time that you wanted to attend a sporting event and you're all stressed out about how you're going to find some good tickets? You know, maybe it was the last minute. Maybe you were thrown by the price for the entire week leading up to the event, and you kept waiting and waiting, hoping that the market would drop and you could find some tickets that are affordable. Maybe you were just competing with some other buyers out there who were doing the same thing. Well, buying tickets to your favorite events should not be giving you high blood pressure, okay? So let me introduce you to our newest sponsor of Good Morning CaneSport, and that is GameTime.co. GameTime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sporting events and also cultural events as well, for those of you that like to have a little diversity in your lives and go to the theater and concerts and things like that. GameTime.co can help you too. They have killer deals on last-minute tickets. But even better than that, they have a best price guarantee. So if you find tickets in the same location and row for less somewhere else, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So you wonder how this company got started. Back in 2012, founder Brad Griffith, he almost missed a playoff game of his beloved San Francisco Giants because he scrambled to get last-minute tickets, and then he was in the basement of a sports bar trying to print them out, and he had all kinds of trouble, and he barely made it for the first pitch, okay? So Brad is sitting there, and he's saying, all right, this is not good enough. I have to improve the experience of going to events for the millions of sports fans out there like myself that want to go follow their teams. So not long after that, Game Time was born. And today they provide the premier marketplace for last-minute tickets to the most popular events in more than 60 cities across the United States and a few in Canada as well. They've eliminated the need for printing, no more paper jams, no more bar basements, okay? They've built a better way to access the best live experiences right from your mobile phone with a highly functional mobile app. You never have to dig for an email with GameTime.co. So you can stop stressing over tickets and start getting hyped for the fun that you'll have watching the Canes, the Dolphins, later on this year, the Heat, the Panthers, even attending, like I said, concerts and theater. I've already used the GameTime.co app personally to shop for some Dolphin tickets over, in the early part of the season. You're going to love their flash deals. You're going to love the capability of getting the best deal at the last minute. They have images of the seat views so you can visualize when you buy your seats exactly what that is going to look like in the stadium or arena. And every purchase also comes with event cancellation protection. They cancel the event, you're getting your money back. So get ready to score tickets quickly, skip the hassle, enjoy the moment. Always at the best price available and even at the last minute. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code word CANES, C-A-N-E-S, and you will get $20 off your first ticket purchase, courtesy of Good Morning CaneSport and GameTime.co. And maybe even Matt Shodell will throw in a box of popcorn if he's feeling generous on that given day. So the code is CANES, C-A-N-E-S. You get $20 off. Create an account. Use that redeem code. You won't be happy. Download Game Time today for last-minute tickets with the lowest price guaranteed. We welcome GameTime.co to the Good Morning CaneSport family. And hope you guys will find a good moment to check them out as the football season moves forward and you start looking at some other events as well. All right, Matt, let's move on to some of our couple of our other stories that are on the website this morning. We got a few recruiting updates for you. We take a look at 4 commits that the Miami Hurricanes need to keep from flipping in the 2024 class. And what that means is that other schools are coming hard at these guys, and they're vital to the success of this recruiting class. And you guys can read the story, check it out. I'll give you a little heads up on who the guys are. We look at Josiah Trader, the wide receiver from Chaminade Madonna. Vital that Miami holds on to him as they also try to flip his teammate, Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State. Another wide receiver, Chance Robinson, who's really growing in the eyes of a lot of schools out there. He's being continuously pursued by programs like Florida, Penn State, and now even Ohio State has targeted him. They've given him an offer. They're trying to bring him to Columbus along with Jeremiah Smith. Chance Robinson admitted to us last week that he may take a visit to Ohio State. This is one to watch. This is one to take seriously. So Chance Robinson is one that Miami can't afford to flip. Florida State has emerged as a possible threat for Artavius Jones, the defensive lineman out of Blountstown, Florida. He's a 4-star defensive lineman. Miami has to stay on top of that one. He's a big physical D tackle. He's what they need in this class. They cannot afford to lose him to Florida State. Florida State's been having some decent recruiting success in this cycle, and Miami's playing a little bit of catch up. To continue playing that catch up, you can't go backwards. Can't lose Artavius Jones. And then another one who's being pursued by Alabama now is linebacker Cam Pruitt. Miami kind of snagged this guy when he was a little bit under the radar, and now Alabama has jumped in on Pruitt after he worked out for them at one of their camps. He's a really good prospect, was started out under the radar. Now he's not. So Miami has to hold on to Cam Pruitt. That one will be very important. Matt, you've covered recruiting for about 3 or 4 decades now. Flips in both directions are part of the deal. But I just outlined 4 guys that we don't think Miami can afford to lose. Just your general thoughts on the concept of flipping. I personally would like to see a system where once you commit, you sign, that there's not all this flipping and flopping all through the recruiting process. But your general thoughts on that subject.
Well, my general thoughts in general about how you view things. You probably today actually said something that rang the most true of anything you've ever said.
Wow.
And that was when you were talking about GameTime.co. You just read a script and it was perfectly accurate. So it was nice to hear you. It was nice to hear you say something accurate for a change. I appreciated that.
In that spot, they gave me some copy points.
Yeah, it was very factual. I was looking up some of it while you were talking. It was very factual. Now,
interesting app, really. In all honesty,
yeah.
I mean, before we agreed to take them as a sponsor, I checked them out. I looked at it, made sure they had a good product.
Yeah,
and I was pretty impressed. I thought,
it sounds like it's cheaper than some of the other major ones that everybody already knows about.
But
anyway, huh?
They have flash sales, which are great. You go into the events, and there'll be like a certain block of tickets that'll say flash sale, and they'll save you money.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so having covered recruiting for not 3 or 4 decades, but a couple of decades, guys like Josiah Trader, he's local, right? Like that's not the guys I worry about. There's people you worry about flipping all the time, and commitments throughout the history of commitments have taken, under the radar visits have fielded calls from other schools, whatever it may be. Sometimes they do shut down their recruitment and just that's it, which is great. But in today's day and age, they often don't do that. They generally they're allowed to hire, it's not called an agent, but they're allowed to hire an advisor, a financial advisor, whatever, who basically is a lawyer, is an agent most of the time. And those people are not saying, hey, shut everything down because that's how you're going to get the most money. The way you get the most money in NIL deals is to find out what other programs want you and maybe what NIL opportunities are at those schools. Like that's just the way it is now. But in normal times, the area recruits that have committed to Miami, it's much harder for an out-of-state program to get those guys to flip, because on top of having to convince them that their future is better at whatever school they're not committed to, they have to, that prospect has to be okay with leaving. Family can't come to my games, friends can't come to my games, siblings can't come to my games, aunts and uncles can't come to my games unless they have a bunch of them in that particular school. That means a lot, believe it or not, to young men who have not gone to summer camp like I did and have been around their families and their friends basically 365, 24/7 for, whatever number you're, 18 years, 17 years. It's a big leap of faith to just say, I'm going to go to Ohio State or Alabama, where there's there are Florida student athletes there. There's not a ton of them like there are down here. And certainly your friends and family and everything aren't, a phone call away to bring you some, whatever your favorite food is, stone crabs, obviously, for everybody. But so that's, Josiah, I'm not worried about. But, when you see, again, this is why you worry about a guy like the Alabama guy, right? That's his home state. That's the one you worry about. And yeah, he came down here after he got the Alabama offer and seemed to sort of say all the right things. But, it's a long way to signing day. And again, I'm a big proponent. And I swear I'm the first one that ever suggested this. But now it seems like everybody thinks it's a great idea. I just said it off the top of my head like a year ago to just make everyday signing day. I don't understand why that can't be. Like, why is that so hard to do? Instead of committing, sign. Like, enough with this whole committing nonsense.
You'll have the same deadlines.
It's an NIL bidding war.
You should be able to commit earlier.
Forget the committing, not committing. I'm talking about signing.
Signing, yeah.
You understand the difference between signing and committing, right?
Sign earlier, sign. And if you go, and if I'm Miami, I'm saying, okay, you want to commit, we will take your commitment, but you're signing.
No, there'll be no more commitments. That's my whole point. Get rid of commitments. Either you're signed or you're open. Like, enough with this whole commit nonsense. NIL, I want more, I'm going to commit to them if you don't give me that. I'm committed to them. Let me know if you have more for me. Like, enough with that nonsense, man. Just have them sign. Like, you found the place you love. You have coaches you love. They told you, whoever it is, whatever companies are there that your people reached out to, say NIL is going to be there for you. Great. Sign. You already have a free year to transfer anyway if it doesn't work out, right? So, I mean, why the NCAA hasn't figured this out yet, these bureaucratic, idiots, obviously, I think that's a bad word to say nowadays. I don't care. That's what they are. It's just beyond belief. When they made these new rules, they should have changed that one too. No more signing day. They've already ruined signing day in February. The December signing day is a joke. It's a joke. Nobody's missing work for December signing day anymore. There's maybe 3 or 4. Well, I take it back. Maybe a handful of announcements that affect Miami every signing day now in December. And February doesn't exist anymore, So just make everyday signing day. That could be the big news. Guess what? Because that's even better, right? You have an announcement that you're signing. How excited would fans be to tune in for an announcement, just not that somebody's going to commit to you and might change his mind in a month, but that he's locked in and signing his paper that day. And you could do that for 30 days out of the year. You could see that for 30 days out of the year. How much excitement would that generate in college football for the entire country at every program to have basically 500 top recruits throughout 365 days being able to sign on a day that they want instead of being committed for 3 months and then signing when everyone knows you're going to sign, or commit and flip and the fans are disgusted with the person. I mean, it just makes so much sense. It's so annoying that somebody like me came up with that idea because I was the first. And now, I think other people have said it also, not crediting me because, I'm just a schmuck. Who am I? But I think it's a great idea. I don't understand why they haven't already done it or why it's not being discussed. You never hear any of the NCAA people even whisper it, but it's a no-brainer.
All right, so one of those guys we were talking about was Josiah Trader, and we have a more detailed story about him on the site this morning. He kept his recruitment open when he committed to Miami back on July the 13th, but since then, in the 3+ weeks since that commitment, his bond with the Miami coaching staff has only gotten stronger. So we've got, story about that on the website. His bond is continuing to grow with Kevin Beard. FSU, Ohio State, Georgia, Florida, and Penn State are among the teams that are continuously reaching out to him, trying to get him to back off his Miami commitment. But right now, it's looking like Josiah Trader will be pretty solid to the Canes. And then also today, we have a story on a 2025 4-star tight end by the name of Keati Armstrong, whose Miami recruitment has been picking up here. And you guys can take a look at what he's saying about Miami in that story. All right, well, that's going to do it for today for Good Morning CaneSport. If you like this show, like this channel, hit your subscribe button, hit your like button. It helps us with the algorithms at YouTube, grow our audience. If you're not yet a subscriber to CaneSport.com, today is the final day of our fall camp special. You can get 75% off an annual subscription. That cuts it down to like $6.25 a month. I hope that you feel that that's the greatest bargain in sports. If you prefer to try a monthly subscription, you can get your first month for $1. So please, 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 if you're not yet a subscriber to CaneSport.com, come join our community, be a part of CaneSport this year. So for Matt Shodell, I'm Gary Furman. Thank you once again, everybody, and we will see you again next time.